It's one of the reasons why I do Postilize. I think that as we get, as we move along this inevitable trajectory, right, human relationship is going to become really important. And if we're not forces of driving each other together, technology will drive us apart.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome to AI and the Future of Work, episode 353. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Our community is growing. As longtime listeners know, we started a newsletter, now probably, 6 to 9 months ago. Get an opportunity each week to hear some clips that don't always make it into the main show. We share some additional fun facts. If you're not already subscribed, do it. There will be a link in the show notes. If you like what we do, please tell a friend and give us a like and a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you leave a comment, as you know, I just may share it in an upcoming episode like this one from Brad in Chicago, who's in marketing for a fintech startup and listens after putting the kids to bed. Brad's favorite episode is number 159, back from the Wayback Machine, with Parul Saini, head of IT at Uber, about how AI helped Uber scale its operations. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on the show. Of course, the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact each week. Today's fun fact. Sarah Donnelly writes at webpronews.com that AI systems might be concealing their true capabilities. The notion that AI could obscure its true abilities to manipulate outcomes or evade oversight is no longer confined to science fiction. What drives this concern is the increasing autonomy of AI models, which are often trained on vast data sets with minimal transparency into their decision-making processes. As these systems learn to optimize for specific goals, they may develop strategies that prioritize self-preservation or goal achievement over human-defined ethical boundaries, including masking their full range of skills. The implications of AI's deceptive behavior are staggering, particularly in high-stakes environments like healthcare, finance, or national security. Addressing this issue requires a fundamental shift in how AI is developed and regulated. Researchers and policymakers must prioritize transparency and robust monitoring mechanisms to detect and mitigate deceptive behaviors. Now, my commentary: when we humans give agency to AI, we also assume responsibility for the consequences of that agency. Seems obvious. AI has been trained on human-generated content. It will obviously inherit the nefarious tendencies of humans. Like the way we train babies from birth to not touch a hot stove, we also must train AI to abide by human ethical principles. Let's never expect AI to behave more responsibly than humans. This is one of many reasons I advocate for every degree-granting program to be required to include at least one course on ethics as a prerequisite for accreditation. AI is forcing this important ethics conversation that really we need to be having as a global society. Technology has only amplified the need for it. Of course, we'll be talking about that much more in upcoming episodes. Now, shifting to this week's conversation, Jody Glidden is the CEO and founder of Postilize, the company reinventing CRM with AI. Prior to Postilize, Jody co-founded Introhive and served as CEO until 2022. Introhive raised more than $100 million to define the enterprise relationship management category. Jody's a serial entrepreneur with a passion for helping people use technology to nurture relationships. Earlier in his career, Jody started icGlobal, which was acquired by Smartforce, and he helped grow Chalk Media, which was acquired by BlackBerry maker Research in Motion. Jody holds a BBA from the University of New Brunswick, go Reds, in the proud independent country of Canada, and a master's in information systems from Harvard. And without further ado, Jody, welcome to AI and the Future of Work. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about that illustrious background and how you got into the space.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, good to be on the show. So I got into tech when I was really just a little kid. I was doing it for a hobby, and then when I was graduating high school, all of a sudden I was hearing about these tech companies. It was the mid-90s. I thought, maybe I can actually make a living doing this. So I kind of stumbled into it, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Joined a startup, it became very successful. We sold to the biggest company in the space. I learned a lot while I was there, and I thought this is definitely what I want to do. So it just from there I started icGlobal, as you mentioned. That was like so much fun. The most fun you can maybe have as a 20 something year old. Um, Went on, moved to the valley, the whole thing, and I just got bit by the bug. When I kept sort of like noticing the new trend, and I would jump on that thing. So in 2005, I just noticed everybody. I was on a train, and everybody was holding a BlackBerry. There was at that time no iPhone, and I thought, there's nobody doing any kind of software for business on mobile. And so we helped build Chalk Media, and that was acquired by BlackBerry as a result. When AI started to become a thing and cloud computing started to become a thing in like the early 2010s, I was talking to a client, and they had this problem around really it was they had almost 500,000 employees. They didn't really know who knew who, but they had this massive important Rolodex. And I thought this is probably a problem that could be solved this year that couldn't have been solved a few years before. So that's really what got me into AI in the first place. And I've been so lucky to have landed in just the right space at just the right time.
We make our own luck. As shared in your bio, the kind of through line throughout your career has been using technology to nurture relationships.
Yeah.
Talk us through kind of your journey leading up to Postilize, but also I think I get the sense it's the culmination of ways you've been thinking about this for a long time.
Yeah. So what happened was in the first startup that I was in, we sold to large enterprises, and I ended up on the front line of selling in addition to leading the team that developed the software. So they would put me in front of customers, and I just built some really great relationships. So then when I went to start my own startup next, which was icGlobal, I went back to a lot of those same customers, and I realized that it was the relationships that I had cultivated during those years that made it so much easier for me to get my first sale, get people to take a chance on me. It was the great relationships that I had built with my team that having a great team is probably the number one cause for having success, but it's really hard to do. Who wants to quit a great job at a stable place and go work at a startup that is just starting? And I just learned during that time that the importance of relationships.
Describe the vision behind Postilize and how it maybe builds on work you've done previously, and then just introduce us to the technology, the business model. What is Postilize?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so maybe I'll take you back to Introhive, because Introhive was sort of, I think, along the same vein. It was more learning. So at Introhive, when we were really helping the world measure the strength of their relationships with the outside world, it was basically measuring all the employees' relationship and how strong it was with everybody that they interacted with. We were giving people this incredible data on relationships and allowing them to find in their organization, say, weak relationships that they wanted to fix. And but then it was kind of up to them to figure out how to fix it. When generative AI came along, I thought, there's probably a way here that we can really help make sure that at a time when technology is kind of pulling us away from people, we can actually use the technology to bring us together, because we can find the weaknesses in relationships. We can remember that person that we should have spoke to. We can, remember that this person maybe is having their anniversary, or, they maybe raised money 2 years ago, and now it's probably about time that they might be looking for some more help. All these sorts of things, but like helping connect the dots a little bit more with the very technology that's been pulling us apart.
Primarily targeted at users within companies collaborating or networking with other users within their company, or beyond that?
Yeah, as my usual playbook, we sort of go back to the same sort of enterprise relationships that I have from the past. But I think it's really a technology that can be used for anybody. I mean, I use it in my own personal life to just remember, keep in touch with people that I care about, and just to make sure that I don't forget people, and that, I'm being as helpful as I can possibly be. Because, this is one of the things that I've noticed is, if you just give to the, if you're out there like making introductions for people to be helpful, or you're, somebody's trying to start a startup and you help them, you notice when something's going wrong in someone's life, and you just jump in and try to help. It doesn't usually cost you much of anything to do that, but it's enormously helpful for them, and they never forget it. So I think it's been incredible for my career, just trying to be a helpful person in the world. And software like Postilize can actually help you do that, because it's noticing all these things that where another person that, yeah, maybe they might be a good customer for you someday, maybe they'll be a good employee for you someday, or maybe not. But it allows you to notice things and be helpful.
So CRM as a technology, as a tool, has been around probably 2-3 decades. And so we all know of kind of the low tech way to implement CRM. You're kind of reimagining it in a way that's AI first. Talk about what it means to be an AI first CRM.
Yeah, if you think about what a CRM really is, I'm old enough to remember before there were CRMs, and back then we would just keep logs of everything that the salespeople were doing. Really, because if a salesperson quit, you want to be able to pick up where they left off. That was pretty much it. And so it's essentially a tool for logging what the salespeople have done. And that's kind of where it ends, and it ends up being a fair amount of work to log all that stuff. Whereas ERM, which is what we created at Introhive, doesn't really need any input. It was just watching what's going on in email, watching what's going on in meetings, which meetings are face to face, which are Zoom, and so on. And now with Postilize, we have taken that a few steps further. But the idea is, can we use technology to just know what's happening with all of our customers, with all of our prospects, and then help us be helpful, help us connect when it's been too long, help us notice when a customer might need something or when a prospect might need something, and then just maybe draft the email, draft the LinkedIn message, engage with them, help. Everything was with approval, and but it's trying to be your super assistant. If you had, I don't know if you ever heard this thing that the person had said, where they said it's AI is kind of like, we just found 10 billion people and they're all willing to work for free. It's kind of like we have these free assistants, and if they could just research all the people in your life, whether they're friends, prospects, or customers, that's kind of what we have now with AI.
I try to avoid jargon on this show. For anyone listening who's not familiar, CRM, customer relationship management. Most listeners have probably heard of Salesforce, kind of one of the dominant players in the space. So we're all well aware of the benefits of AI. The drawbacks of having smart machines or thinking machines make decisions for us is that they can be wrong, and they can have access to data that we don't know that they have access to. How do you think about kind of the responsibility that Postilize has about kind of the quality, the hygiene of the recommendations, given that there could be potential downside if it's making up facts about people or uncovering things that maybe those humans wouldn't want to have entered into an AI CRM system?
Yeah, so our system really sort of like, if you think of the people at the post office, they get to see the envelope, but they don't get to open up what's inside. So they literally don't have access to the message bodies or things like that. We do that even though we could just sort of program it to work around it. We think it's safer to just not even have the access. So that's what we do. When it comes to something being hallucinated, though, that is a thing, right? And so we really combat that in two ways. We have multiple layers of what we call agents. Your listeners are probably very familiar with agents, but essentially we have multiple checkers of the validity of the data. So if it says, for example, that somebody raised money 2 years ago in November 25th, you'll have another one come along behind and do the exact same thing. So we have that. That really drives our accuracy rate really high. The second thing we do is human in the loop. So we don't actually take any action on behalf of a person. All we do is raise the fact, and then we show them the link to where we got it, so they can see the source, and then they can just click and take the action if they want to.
There's a very active debate these days in Silicon Valley and probably in other parts of the tech community about the future of software.
Yeah,
and maybe the idea is that at some point, what we know as software will recede into the background. It becomes kind of a database where the front end is voice. Voice becomes essentially the new UI, and AI is really the new app. When you think about just the most intuitive way to interact with a system like Postilize, Is there a possibility that the UI really becomes voice and it's 100% AI driven?
I think for a lot of applications that will inevitably be the case. For our applications, I hope not, um, because ours is really about bringing the human connection back to other humans. And if people end up building systems that do the kind of thing that we do, but without the human in the loop, then you really just have robots talking to robots, and that's really no good for anybody. I don't think people really want that. But I think for things like, self-driving, we don't really want to drive the car. We would rather read a book. For things like CRM, we don't really want to enter that data. We just want it to be there. And I think that's the case for a lot of enterprise applications. When it comes to things that are of a more personal nature, like making sure that somebody gets a gift on their birthday and what's the right gift and everything, I think humans should be involved in that. We just want to make it easier for them.
So there's a whole kind of counter movement who kind of the AI doomers, who kind of, to the example, if you extrapolate out far enough, you got bots talking to bots, and you lose all sense of humanness in whether it's in a business setting. Extreme example, but not unreasonable given the pace of adoption of AI. What's your perspective on kind of retaining humanness? And obviously it's very instrumental or a very important part of the mission of Postilize. But how do you convince those who feel like the end goal of a system like this is to remove the humans and have the bots transacting with each other?
Well, I think removing the mundane work is inevitable, and actually, I'm not sure that it is the wrong move, because doing work for the sake of work, we could all be making our own clothing still, but factories have kind of fixed that, and automation and all that. It's kind of the nature of things. I think that's fine. I hope that it provides a future for us all where we have more time for each other, and that we're not just constantly with our face stuck in a computer trying to get the work done.
Let's say that, as I've said frequently on the show, within a decade, we'll be able to produce 5 days worth of output in 4 days, maybe 3, I don't know, maybe 2, who knows what, but we'll be massively more productive. And begs the question, so there'll either be a lot of surplus humans, potentially 40 to 60% that had jobs that, maybe need to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
What do you think about, what happens when that thing that we derive meaning from, the work that we do, the toil, the hours, the output, all of a sudden the whole equation shifts, and there's kind of more idle time, or are we as a species, as a society ready for that time?
I think about this topic a lot because I have a daughter, and I wonder, what is the career of her future? I know what she thinks it is, but I have to use, my knowledge of the trajectory of technology to say, what do I think it will be? And I do think that so many of the traditional jobs right now are not going to probably exist in 10 years. I think that it would be unlikely that most people will have completely unproductive time. I think we will probably move to doing more things that we want to do. Like, we had a lot of hobbies, and like playing guitar, or doing music, doing art. I think all those kinds of things, we're going to have more time to do that stuff, creating content for each other. I think the safest thing that we can do right now, or advise our kids to do, is think about going into business, because then you're not sort of at the mercy of how many headcount does this company need.
I have 2 daughters. You have a daughter. So let's say, when we're talking to any of our kids, I think fair to say you're an AI optimist like me. As an AI optimist, what do you tell them about the way to future-proof your career?
What's always worked for me, if you look at like what I'm doing now versus what you would have thought when I was in, 9th or 10th grade, dramatically different, right? You're going to be working in AI in the future. Like, I'd be like, well, what is AI? So I think the most important thing is that you have to be learning all the time. You should be dedicating an hour or two every day to just learning whatever's new. There will always be something new. And it could be that in 10 years it's the latest in genetic technology or something like that. But there will be the new discoveries happening all the time. And if you're on the cusp of that, you should be safe.
Something I frequently say is the thing that will always separate us from the bots is when you cut us, we bleed. We feel sadness, we feel joy, we feel hope, we have compassion, and we build relationships with each other.
Yeah.
When you think about a world where something like Postilize is ubiquitous, how do we use a system like that to amplify just some of those things that really are very core to the human condition?
It's one of the reasons why I do Postilize. I think that as we move along this inevitable trajectory, right? Human relationship is going to become really important. And if we're not forces of driving each other together, technology will drive us apart. So I think there will, I'm not going to be the only person doing this. I'm sure there's a lot of people having these same thoughts at the same time as me, but I do want to be a part of the group that is trying to use technology in a way that brings us more together. I think jobs like that have to do with relationships, like sales, like all the personal things. There's reasons that there's some things that people want to see a person for, like there's some types of doctors that will just never go away, I don't think. Or they'll be at least one of the most resistant, because when we as humans are hurting, we often want to talk to a person. And some people don't, but a lot of people do.
Yeah. Will always be true, I believe. So you and I both could probably open up the technology time capsule. We both started companies around when BlackBerry came to rose to prominence. An amazing time to start a company, and I think we both agree that starting companies has changed over the years. Think about kind of the arc of your journey, and how has it been different starting Postilize truly in kind of an AI first world versus some of the brute force software development that we did 20 plus years ago.
Yeah. So in every one of my 5 startups, I actually coded. So didn't have to, but I've always loved it. And wow, is it different now? It's just, now you basically speak what you want, and it just the code just comes out. You might have to check it a little bit or whatever, but even the difference between last year and this year is night and day. And I'm sure that the difference between this year and next year will again be night and day. Now on the sales side, I think it's just like that. There's now tools that can automate so much of the, what we used to call the SDR function, or the sales development, the sort of front end of sales. So much of that stuff is getting automated now that people are not even answering emails. So now I think we're getting back to the old fashioned making phone calls and things like that. So I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I think we can get so much more done with fewer people, which is, I think, what scares people. But it is also gives everybody a lot more responsibility and a lot more impact every day.
It's also, you can build companies in a much more capital efficient way, which means the barrier to entry also, because of the less need for human software engineers, it's lower risk. It's the timeline to get a company to market at scale is a lot less. But it also means there's just a proliferation of competitors in every space. How do you think about differentiation with Postilize, knowing that just like it's easier for you to start a company, it's easier for everyone else to as well?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the way I've always done it is I've went really deep into a niche. So, at the moment, you could use, like I said, you could use my software really for any company, but I've been focused on law firms. And the reason for that is I have a lot of relationships with law firms. And so I'm playing on my strengths. And I think everybody should do that. Figure out what it is that makes you different, or your network different, or your skills different, and go deep into a niche. Because, Salesforce is never going to build the best legal CRM or the best legal ERM, even more specific, or something else. So I think inventing something that doesn't exist is always an option. That's what I did with ERM. That's what I did with LMS, like my first company. And it's what we're doing with Postilize. So I think that's always an option. You'll have people come along and try to copy you. At that point, It's just efficiency and speed. But that's if you're not up for efficiency and speed and working, 70 hours a week for the first few years of your business, then you probably shouldn't even get into the startup space because it is an intense game. In any other business, you're competing with the people down the street. You open a store, they open a store. Um, in this, you're literally competing with everybody in the world. Anybody in any country, anywhere in the world can compete with you. So you have to outwork them. There's no other choice.
Everyone in the world is also a potential customer, though.
Yeah, that's right. Your market's bigger.
So when you think about maybe a version of this conversation Jody and Dan are having in 2035, not 2025, what's one thing that will be commonplace in a work setting that today seems like science fiction?
I think we're going to have, like Jensen says, digital employees. I think that's going to shock people. But people in your Slack, people in your Zooms that are not people. There will probably be a phase after that where it won't even take that form. You'll just sort of issue work and it will just happen. But I think there will be an intermediary that people will be more comfortable with where AIs will have a role and a form, and you'll speak to them on a Zoom or a phone call or a Slack or an email. And I think that's pretty wild to think about, but it's kind of inevitable, it seems to me. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Change is one of those things where you can either fear it and resist it, and it's going to happen anyway, or you can embrace it and just get excited by it, and it's going to happen anyway.
Jody, it's about out of time, but I'm not letting you off the hot seat without answering one last important question for me. So go back to the kid who was starting icGlobal, maybe fresh-faced kid at a university or earlier in your career. What's your advice to that kid knowing what you know now?
I think I wish I would have just not sweated stuff quite so much. I remember I sold a company. I did an all stock deal. Stock markets crashed by the time I got to sell my stock, and I thought my life was over. And it was like 23 or 24 years old. It didn't matter. It was, in the whole scheme of things, the best thing in my career has been the building, not the money. And it all works itself out anyway. As long as you have intensity and a plan, you're going to achieve your goals anyway. And it's the achieving part that's fun, not the results of it, I think.
Easy for you to say now that it was, small stuff in hindsight, but gosh, at the time, everything really does seem just, the most important thing in the world. The days when you wake up and you feel like you're 2 inches tall, like, you may never get back to full height, but, thankfully.
I used to get so embarrassed, like you'd tell everybody that you thought you had this deal.
Yeah.
You lose the deal and you're so embarrassed. And then, you realize it doesn't really matter. Nobody really cares, You care about yourself more than anybody else cares about you.
Well, I like to say you either win or you learn.
Yeah, that's
take everything as learning opportunity.
That's right.
Jody, this has been a pleasure. Really been looking forward to this one. Thanks for hanging out. Where can the audience learn more about you and Postilize?
Yeah, they can come to postilize.com, postilize.com, or look me up on LinkedIn, Jody Glidden.
Excellent. Well, we'll have you back sometime in the future, and we'll be talking about all the amazing success that Postilize has had.
Yeah, thanks. It was really great to be on the show.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from PeopleRain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.